In the 250-year history of this country, we have never heard about widespread voter fraud until Trump lost in 2020. And you know why? Because there is no widespread voter fraud. Hello again. Welcome to The Ruthless Truth. I am your host, Truth Davis. In this forum, I share opinions, thoughts, truths on a wide variety of topics based on what I believe to be a unique life experience. I'm an inner city kid who ascended to the C-suite of a Fortune 100 company, so I've seen some things. And you can read more of the details in the notes or in the bio. My intent is to share stories and experiences and hopefully provide some life lessons that will help you in your journey. Please follow me on Instagram at TruthDavis5, subscribe to the YouTube channel Ruthless Truth, and there's also a Facebook page, Ruthless Truth. General format, I'll share some initial commentary on current news or just my thoughts. And then I'll have a deeper discussion on one topic, which is today's truth. And then I like to finish with an American history fun fact. Okay, my intent for the Ruthless Truth is for this to be a positive forum. I've positioned it as a teaching platform, partly fueled by my personal life experiences, but also from observation, research, analysis, and input from the listening audience. I want people to come away from each episode feeling informed and with different perspectives to consider. I want the subject matter to be thought-provoking and applicable to everyday life. There's enough negativity in the world, in our news and social media. So my goal is to remain positive. But I gotta admit, staying true to this principle is becoming more and more difficult because there's so much bad news in our country and in the world. So even though I can't totally ignore the negativity, I will strive to find some optimism and hope within these discussions. Okay, let's look at the hot topics of the week. First, the partial government shutdown that has TSA agents unpaid and airports in chaos. It's an unnecessary atrocity. It seems every week I question how much more useless Congress can be, but they keep lowering the bar. I don't understand how they can see the financial struggles of the TSA agents and the pain inflicted on the flying public and then just go home and sleep at night. And do you even know what the impasse is and whose fault it is that is not resolved? I had planned to rant on this for a while, but as of this recording, it appears that a deal will soon be reached. In fact, it may have already been reached as you are listening to it now. But could it possibly be because beginning on March 27th, the Senate embarks on its 2-week Easter break, and they don't want to experience long wait times for their personal travel? Or did they realize it would be a very bad look for them to be on vacation while everyone else was suffering through their chaotic and disruptive holiday travel? Whatever the motivation, I'm happy to see some optimism. So, while I won't rant excessively, I still have some comments on how we even got into this mess. So, who was at fault? Well, the guilty parties are the Democrats, the Republicans, and the president. What do the Democrats want? They want to block ICE agents from wearing masks to shield their identities and then require them to obtain warrants from judges to enter private homes or businesses. Okay? The Republicans, they really don't have any specific demands. They just don't want to put any additional restrictions on the ICE agents. At the start of the week, there was a glimmer of hope based on a reasonable idea. Because if the sticking point is about ICE, then why does TSA have to suffer? So the Democrats propose funding TSA now, and then they can all work together later to work out the ICE issues. And the Republicans believe they could secure the rest of the DHS funding without the need of Democrats. In fact, Republican Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana told CBS News on Sunday that, quote, "We ought to accept the Democrats' offer to open everything up but ICE." So we were almost there. But then we get to the third culprit, the president. The president initially instructed Republicans to make no deal with the Democrats unless it includes passage of the Save American Act bill. Really? I mean, really? This just says the president does not care at all about the pain felt by TSA and travelers. He only cares about this legislation, which is a solution to a problem that does not exist. Did you ever notice or consider in the 250-year history of this country, we have never heard about widespread voter fraud until Trump lost in 2020. And you know why? Because there is no widespread voter fraud. According to extensive analysis by the Heritage Foundation, no election in the U.S. has been impacted by voting fraud. For example, in reviewing Pennsylvania, always a hotly contested state, they looked at data from 32 elections over the past 30 years with over 100 million votes cast, and they found a total of 39 incidents of fraud, 39 out of 100 million. Results were similar for Arizona and every other state. It's not an issue. But the president says it's his number one priority because he wants to protect elections. Yeah, well, it's basically a voter suppression bill by implementing additional requirements for voter registration, such as proof of citizenship. A driver's license will not satisfy this requirement. You'll need a passport, birth certificate, or other naturalization documentation. And here's the irony of it all. It's quite likely that the SAVE Act will hurt Republicans more than Democrats. How? Well, approximately 50% of Americans do not have a passport. But in red states, the percentage is much higher, averaging nearly 70%. And in Mississippi, it's 78%, while 74% in Alabama and 70% in West Virginia. Bottom line, it's bullshit legislation driven by the president panicking about the midterms. Man, don't buy into this. Tell Congress to focus on issues that really matter and improve the lives of everyday Americans. Fortunately, the president has softened his stance and will now support compromise legislation to end the partial shutdown. So that's a good thing. Okay, once again, I have little to say about the war in Iran, but I will give you a couple of rays of hope. First, this is not going to last long. The war is very unpopular with Americans, and it's driving up prices while driving the stock market down. This is an election year. The administration doesn't want to carry this baggage into the primary season. Additionally, we're all witnessing in real time as the president is learning some painful lessons. And these lessons not only apply in war and politics, but also in business. Lesson 1, make sure you understand your enemy or competitor better than they understand you. It's clear the Iranians have studied and assessed Americans and the president, and they have a much better understanding of Trump than he has of them. He overlooked 47 years of Iranian resistance and resolve, and that they have found ways to fight effectively despite being overwhelmingly overmatched militarily. Lesson 2, arrogance can lead to bad planning and downfall. For every action you take, you need to consider and anticipate the opposition's response. By all accounts, the U.S. was surprised that Iran attacked other Gulf nations and that they closed the Strait of Hormuz. Often, these types of miscalculations stem from arrogance and underestimating the competition. One of the best examples of this in business is Blockbuster Video, who once had the opportunity to acquire all of Netflix for just $50 million. They arrogantly believed in their permanence of their physical store dominance and late fee model. Of note, around this time, I was actually being recruited by Blockbuster to join their executive team. And when the COO asked me why I declined to accept an offer, I just told him candidly, I don't believe you have a sustainable business model. Hopefully the president will take these lessons to heart and be a little bit more thoughtful as he proceeds with his term. Okay, final news item. The 2026 World Happiness Report was recently released. This report has been released annually since 2012 and reflects the findings of 100,000 surveys across countries worldwide. The methodology is a combination of self-reported surveys and analysis from economic and social experts. Some findings were expected, such as Finland ranking number 1 in happiness for the 9th year in a row, with the remaining Scandinavian countries ranking in the top 10. But there were a few surprises of note. The United States fell out of the top 20, falling to 23rd, behind countries such as Mexico and Saudi Arabia. Costa Rica rose to 4th, and Israel was 8th. But the biggest surprise or change from the recent trends is among the youth. Historically, happiness has followed a U-shaped curve where life satisfaction is high in youth, declines to a low point in midlife, roughly ages 40 through 50, and then rises again into old age. The low points are in the 40s because this is when people are most unhappy due to midlife crisis, career disappointment, and family obligations. Then happiness begins to increase in the late 50s, peaking again at 70. But in the latest study, for the US, the unhappiest group were 18 to 25-year-olds. They're calling it quarter life crisis, driven by intense economic pressure, social media comparison, and a lack of purpose. Significant stressors include the rising cost of living, career uncertainty, and loneliness. And not surprisingly, the more time spent on social media, the more likely to be unhappy. So what can be done? Well, first, let's help our young people understand that social media is not real. They are comparing themselves to myths and fantasy. Secondly, reduce the time on social media. And with that freed up time, get out. Engage socially in person, both in structured or unstructured environments. Volunteer. Participate in sports activities. Do something to counter the loneliness and engagement on social media. Okay, let's get to today's truth. Okay, today's truth. The U.S. corporate job market is experiencing a seismic shift never before seen. For the past 100 years, there's always been this concept of climbing the corporate ladder. The idea is you get an entry-level job, the first rung of the ladder. Then you focus on doing well, delivering results, continue to receive promotions, and rising up the management ranks to executive level where status, prestige, and financial awards await you. And it's not just a concept. It's very real. There are many current Fortune 500 CEOs who started at the bottom rung of the companies they now lead, including Mary Barra of General Motors, who began as an 18-year-old co-op student inspecting automobile hoods. Doug McMillon, Walmart CEO, who started as a teenager loading trucks at a distribution center. Rodney McMullen, the Kroger CEO, who started as a part-time stock clerk. But for today's young workers, it will be far more challenging to replicate these career experiences. So in today's truth, I want to discuss the rapid disappearance of entry-level jobs and how it is impacting the career prospects of Generation Z in a way that previous generations did not have to deal with. To level set, Gen Z is the generation after millennials, and it includes people born from 1997 to 2012, meaning they're now age 14 to 29. These young people are dealing with labor market dynamics that the rest of us didn't face. Right now, the entry-level job market is the worst it has been in 37 years. Why? Well, historically, entry-level jobs facilitated early career foundational skill development, including research, analysis, drafting, documentation. Employees would develop base skills, then apply and build them in their career as their career advanced. And so from an early age, they could see a career path to pursue. I personally am a textbook example of this path. I graduated with an MBA from Clark Atlanta University and began my career as a brand assistant at Procter & Gamble. I recall a few years ago telling my sons as they approached college graduation that, hey, look, I can tell you two things about your first job in marketing. First, the title will include assistant, marketing assistant, brand assistant, production assistant, assistant account executive, something. And second, the job will suck. I was able to give them this guidance because I had experienced it. While I enjoyed my 5 years at Procter & Gamble, being a brand assistant was tough. I worked 60 to 70 hours a week, often 7 days a week. I recall one Saturday morning, my boss came out to speak to me and was surprised to see my wife sitting in my cube. And he just said, what are you doing here? And she just told him. I never see him. He gets up, he goes to work while I'm still asleep, then he comes home and goes to bed. He kind of laughed it off, but she wasn't trying to be funny. But I knew it was temporary. I knew if I kept working, I would rise in the organization. And so even at the age of 26, I could see a clear path to becoming a chief marketing officer somewhere, within the next 15 years. Today's college graduates face a much more uncertain future. Many of the tasks and skills that, historically were assigned to entry-level employees are being replaced by artificial intelligence, AI. As evidence, entry-level job postings have declined by 35% just since 2023. And accordingly, the unemployment rate for graduates is above 6%. Basically, the lower rung of the corporate ladder has been removed. And these trends have two major implications for the economy and the job market. First, for Gen Z. They must adjust their thinking, focus, and action. A recent survey of Gen Z workers showed 53% are gravitating towards skilled or licensed trades in construction or plumbing and electrical. Jobs installing elevators earn up to 6 figures and don't even require a college degree. Next in line are people-focused professions such as healthcare, education, and social work, which cannot be replaced with AI. And then, will colleges make adjustments? Many Gen Z graduates believe that AI has lessened the value of their degree. So in response, universities are turning their schools into AI training grounds, with several institutions striking major deals with companies like Anthropic and OpenAI. All of this means Gen Z will be the first, but definitely not the last generation to embark on this path. And it's also likely that it will be this generation longer to reach high earning years. It'll take them longer. They may still be struggling at age 30, which will delay marriage, having children, or purchasing a home. And they may also need more financial support from family. I just ask that all of us recognize this generation has a different path, and they deserve our support, if not sympathies. But minimally, don't chastise them and tell them how you did it and achieved success, because it's just not relevant. And, if I may say, a little bit tone deaf. The second implication is on the future of corporate organizational structure. The elimination of the early career positionings will lead to a flattening of the structure, meaning fewer levels, fewer opportunities for promotion. But the even bigger question is, where will we find middle managers? Historically, middle management was the first achievement of rising from lower level positions. But there won't be lower level positions. So where are they going to come from? Well, it'll likely mean a decrease in linear paths and more of a zigzag career where employees will have to find experience and skill development wherever they can and then look to transfer it to corporate America at the middle level. Definitely harder, not only because it may take longer, but also because of all the unknowns. I think it's similar to going to community college before transferring to a 4-year university. So I encourage graduates to pursue opportunities in small to medium-sized businesses to gain skill and experience. And there will be other paths that emerge over time. So to my Gen Zers, try to stay positive and don't be too proud to ask for help. Okay, Let's get to today's American History Fun Fact. Today's American History Fun Fact. I want to tell the story of a very successful entrepreneur who is also an even better human being. Rex David Thomas was born July 2nd, 1932 in Atlantic City, New Jersey. His biological father's name was Sam and his biological mother's name was Molly. Thomas was adopted at 6 weeks old by Rex and Oliva Thomas. Now, when Dave was 5, Oliva died, and his early years were spent moving many times from state to state while his adoptive father sought work. Dave's fondest childhood memories were summers spent in Michigan with Grandma Minnie Sinclair. Minnie taught Dave that, quote, hard work is good for the soul, and it keeps you from feeling sorry for yourself because you just don't have time, end quote. Dave's father, Rex, really wasn't much of a family man, but he and Dave often would go out to eat. And Dave cherished this because he felt these were the occasions when he had his father all to himself. Dining out became a passion for Dave, and he decided he would one day own his own restaurant. Well, in 1944, Dave began working at a restaurant in Knoxville, Tennessee, and then after another move, started working at Hobby House Restaurant in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Owner Phil Klaus became his mentor, motivating Dave and teaching him everything he knew about the business. Well, in the early 1950s, at the age of 18, Dave joined the Army at the start of the Korean War. He served 2.5 years, and then in 1953, he returned to the Hobby House Restaurant. And there was a new waitress there at the store named Lorraine Buskirk, who Dave started dating, and they married in 1954. And the family grew quickly with a total of 5 children. Then in the early 1960s, Dave received his first opportunity to own a restaurant. Dave had met Colonel Sanders, the founder of KFC, and he quickly became one of Dave's strongest mentors. Well, Phil Klaus bought a KFC franchise in 1962, and he offered Dave a chance to revive his 4 failing restaurants in Columbus. And that was even against the Colonel's advice. Dave took the challenge, and he succeeded. He trimmed the menu, used creative promotions, swapping chicken meals for radio time, and making an illuminated sign that looked like a rotating bucket of chicken. Klaus later sold the restaurants to Dave. But Dave had a lifelong love of hamburgers and often visited any burger stand he could find. And when a friend mentioned that it was hard to get a good lunch in downtown Columbus, Dave saw an opportunity. He decided to open a new hamburger restaurant, but was debating what to name it. After trying all 5 of his children's names for the restaurant, Dave decided on his daughter Melinda's nickname, Wendy. And on November 15, 1969, Dave Thomas opened the first Wendy's old-fashioned hamburgers restaurant in Columbus, Ohio. The first menu included hot and juicy hamburgers, rich and meaty chili, French fries, soft drinks, and a frosty dairy dessert. From the beginning, Dave wanted Wendy's to be a place to get great food, made fresh and served by friendly people, a place that didn't cut corners on quality. Wendy's became known for square ground beef hamburgers that hang over the bun, made with the customer's choice of toppings. And on a side note, Dave Thomas regretted naming his restaurant chain Wendy's because he felt it placed immense unnecessary pressure on his daughter, Wendy Thomas Morris. He feared the association stole her privacy and tied her identity too closely to the brand, and he ultimately apologized to her for not naming it Dave's Burgers. But under Dave's leadership, Wendy's led the industry in product innovation. In 1979, the company was the first national chain to introduce salad bars, and in 1983, Wendy's added baked potatoes to the menu. Other innovations followed, and soon the restaurant industry and business community applauded Dave's innovation and success. And Dave had always expressed appreciation for the love and support he received from his adoptive family. Throughout his adult life, he was involved with various organizations to help improve the life of children in foster care. And so in 1990, Dave accepted President George Bush's invitation to be the spokesperson for the White House Initiative on Adoption, which was called Adoption Works for Everyone. But Dave knew he could do more. And so in 1992, he founded the Dave Thomas Foundation for Adoption, which is a national nonprofit public charity dedicated exclusively to finding permanent homes for the more than 150,000 children waiting in North America's foster care systems. And on a personal note, my wife and I annually give to the Dave Thomas Foundation, as well as Covenant House, which provides shelter and support for foster children who have aged out of the foster care system by turning 18 years old. In 1996, President Clinton signed a tax credit bill into law, giving adopted parents a tax credit of $5,000 when they adopt. And at the public signing, the president personally thanked Dave and acknowledged the impact he'd made on adoption across the country. Dave Thomas died on January 8, 2002, at the age of 69, but his legacy endures forever. Okay, that's all I have for you today on The Ruthless Truth. Thank you so much for listening. Again, follow me on Instagram at TruthDavis5. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, Ruthless Truth. And there's a Facebook page, Ruthless Truth. Thanks again, and I will talk to all of you soon.